Hello, good morning. I hope everyone is doing well. Happy Wednesday. We are talking about dyadic interviews today. Let me just double check things here. Yes, we're good. We're good to go. We're talking about dyadic interviews today. And I'm excited because I was actually just reading the blog post that you received yesterday. If you get our newsletters, and if you don't, I highly encourage you to subscribe, and you can do it on the website. I was actually reading the blog post and thinking that I wrote it a few weeks ago. I usually kind of batch all the content for the blog the month before, and now things have changed for that project, and we have gone into a different direction, and it's actually what I want to explore today. If you haven't read the blog posts, I basically talk about, and I use David Morgan as one of the references. He's a very well-known qualitative researcher with many books about focus groups, and he also has some readings about dyadic interviews. And of course, the readings, especially the ones that I use, contrast focus groups and dyadic interviews. So when we are talking about dyadic interviews, we have two people coming together and being interviewed at the same time by the interviewer. And it's accepted that they will co-construct their answers. They will be creating the responses and the answers together and interacting with one another over the course of an interview. And it is an interesting approach, especially for certain topics where sometimes there are a few scenarios where dyadic interviews would be very interesting for you as a qualitative researcher. And one of them is if there is a participant with a health condition or a special need that might feel overwhelmed with either a focus group or even a one-on-one interview. So if you put the caregiver, someone that they have a really strong and trusting relationship, to participate in that interview, it might be more comfortable for your participant, and also unfold things that, because of how overwhelming it might be for them, they wouldn't necessarily put forward or describe if they were alone in an interview with you as the interviewer. Besides that, dyadic interviews are also rich from the point of view of exploring experiences that are shared by, let's say, family members or experienced differently but complementing each other. And that's one of the things that was actually the discussion for the project that I was referring to. I really don't want to give you specifics about that project, more so because of confidentiality, and that's something that I couldn't talk about it without risking sleeping things that would make it too easy to recognize. So I'm going to discuss, and it's totally a made-up scenario, but just to drive the message and explain to you why we decided not to go with dyadic interviews for the project. So the project that I will be working with, the research team is really exploring experiences that happen to women with a chronic health condition during pregnancy and postpartum. And so think about this scenario. Let's say and for those of you that are tired of my pregnancy and postpartum examples, I apologize, but because it's my background and it's my PhD topic, I naturally navigate to those examples, and I actually am involved in projects that are related to that. I have a friend who says that your PhD topic never leaves you after your PhD, and I have a feeling that might be my case. So if you are tired of my pregnancy examples, I apologize. And not apologize, because I really like them and it makes it easier for me to explain things to you. Moving on, I was going to say, let's create this scenario. It's a made-up scenario. It's not the research that I am involved with. But let's say we want to investigate miscarriage or pregnancy termination in the second trimester. So after 20 weeks of pregnancy. It can happen for various reasons. Usually we have the morphologic ultrasound at 20 weeks. So if anything is detected there, couples might decide to discontinue the pregnancy, or it might be medically advised. And in that case, let's put ourselves in the researcher's shoes there, and we want to investigate that experience of infant loss, a later infant loss in the second trimester, unplanned. And we are thinking about conducting dyadic interviews. So we need to really keep in mind what we want to explore. And that was a thing that we reached a conclusion with the research team that dyadic interviews weren't the best for this reason. When something is happening and you want to really look at that bodily experience that happened in the women's body, for them it became a bit of a, I wouldn't call liability, but it wasn't desirable for them to have the partner being part of the interview and co-constructing ideas and insights and experiences and perceptions that really happened in the woman's body. So for example, if a woman, and that's something that has been reported among women who suffer that late loss, if a woman carries a child in a pregnancy for more than 20 weeks and has a loss and not a viable infant, even though that infant is not viable, their body still goes through all the changes to start breastfeeding. So let's say we are starting a research to understand those experiences. You will read, and if you know anyone in your circle, you will hear from women who have gone through that on top of the emotional suffering and the grief, they experience a lot of body pain because their body is ready to nurse, to breastfeed, and they don't have an infant there. And they can't stimulate milk production, so they have to take many precautions, even with shower, bath, hot bath, because all those things would help to stimulate, and they need to stop that stimulus. So it's exhausting for them, and it's something that they find very draining. You can imagine how, if you were trying to explore those aspects, having a partner in that dyadic interview would probably take away some of the experiences that were very, very much focused on the woman and very, 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 very much related to their experiences and their body. And they might actually feel that they are not expressing the extent to which they even felt frustration towards their partner because their partner is there. And because they really probably might feel that they really didn't get it, which might really be possible because it didn't happen to their bodies. Now, that's the scenario that we actually went through with the project, where we realized that because the chronic health condition is really connected to the woman's body, we didn't want the interviews with the partners to be in dyads. We'll be including and having the partners as part of that project, but separately, and more so focusing on their role as partners, their stress, and to what extent they felt that they were able to support women in using and adjusting the goal of the trial for that chronic health condition. So coming back to my made-up scenario, if we were, on the other hand, really wanting to investigate the emotional aspect, the grieving process of parents who lose an infant later in pregnancy, then it might really be more than appropriate to have dyadic interviews. If we are not necessarily exploring physiological bodily experiences that are focused on the woman's side, then co-constructing ideas and really experiences around infant loss would make sense as parents, as two people who are going through that experience and that grieving process. So you can see that even in the same cohort of participants, what the aim of the study would be and the research questions would really sort of like dictate or shape the appropriateness of dyadic versus one-on-one interviews. And that's exactly what ended up happening in our discussion about the project that I am working with. We decided that the experiences that are happening during pregnancy and postpartum connected to the chronic health condition are very much focused on the woman's body, and we really didn't feel that we could take away the time in an interview and the space in an interview for them to express their experiences, the issues that they faced, what helped, what didn't help, what they would like to have done differently. And it was for that reason that we decided not to use dyadic interviews for the project that I am actually going to be starting soon. And I am very comfortable with that because I can see the point that the researchers had, and I agree with it, and I am on board with that. We never know. When you make a decision you make based on certain things, is it possible that it could have been potentially richer in terms of data gathering if we had both people being interviewed together? Yes, it is possible. But the thing that I realized, and it was even after I had written a blog post, is that our research question in that case is not about becoming parents. It's not about welcoming a newborn into life with managing a chronic health condition for the mother. It is really about the experiences of the mother with that chronic health condition during pregnancy and postpartum while trying a new course of management. So because of the clarity that I gained in terms of the question, the research question, I fully supported the idea of not going with dyadic interviews. If it was something that really included both people, both parents, and it was an experience that both lived almost equally but in different, when I say equally, they both lived the same experiences but in different ways, I can see how going with dyadic interviews would be rich and really a lot more interesting than going with two one-on-one interviews with each of them separately. So that's what happened with our project. And all in all, we are really going to have interviews with women, with their partners. And hopefully, if everyone says yes, we'll have interviews separately with all the women and all the partners. It's interesting also to note that for each project, the participation and the number of participants you might be able to recruit will vary depending on the interest, on what you're investigating. In our case, in the case of this particular research, we are very confident that we'll get high numbers. So our sampling comes from a trial, so it's a convenient sampling. However, we are very comfortable that even within that convenient sampling, we'll likely get high numbers because they are people who are known in the research world to be keen to participate, to be interested, to be engaged, and to often see their role in helping the health of future generations. So for the particular project that I am involved, I'm not worried about having a harder time to recruit both women and partners. There could be topics and instances where that is a concern. And that might be a factor that will come into play when you're deciding whether to put two people together and conduct the interview at the same time or have it separately. And if that's your situation, again, it's a matter of weighing advantages and disadvantages or strengths and weaknesses and recognizing the best course of action and going with it and being comfortable with the consequences. Being comfortable does not mean not using strategies to mitigate those weaknesses that we identify, but knowing that they will exist. I guess that's the most important thing. Knowing, recognizing that they will exist, and deciding what you can do to mitigate is actually I feel like it's a very quantitative word. We often don't have that ability. Like, we're not trying to mitigate things. We're just acknowledging that they are happening and often writing about them, reflecting on things that are happening, and as much as possible, reporting and writing later on about those things. So it's more the course of action that needs to happen with whatever decision you make along your research process and your data collection, data analysis, and writing. So that's all I had to share about dyadic interviews. I hope you enjoyed the blog post. It has a really good reference for those of you who might be interested in learning more and reading more about dyadic interviews. And depending on what your topic is, it might be something that you could seriously consider for your own research project. And I would encourage you to share with us, and also share with us if you have conducted any dyadic interviews and how it went. I would love to hear from you. And that's it for today. For next week, we start with a new month. We start with August, which is insane. And we'll be having fresh new content. A lot of things that will be coming will be about writing and rigor, and some really exciting and challenging blog posts for me to write on some methodologies that I am studying more and kind of delving into right now. So there will be lots of exciting things coming up soon, and I hope you will be here and joining on Wednesdays. I don't see any comments from the people who have joined. And if you have any questions, feel free. I usually check the comments and the blog post after I am done. And if you have any questions or want to share any thoughts on what we discussed today, I will be there on Facebook, on social media to chat with you. And I appreciate your time, and have a good day, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.